wonderful time of year. We started with the star. We looked at God's guidance for our lives in Revelation, and we saw that the Magi came from afar. And then last week we talked about the shepherds. We talked about those lowly, lowest of low people that nobody wanted to be around because they stink, right? And they're not educated, and their witness is not used in court. And so they're lowest of the low, and we found out that because of the shepherds, we found that God's good news was for the lowly, like us. And today we're going to talk about the manger. The manger. And I love that song, Mary, Did You Know? Because I'm thinking to myself, while she's there, the baby's in the manger, and she's thinking all of these things. Did you know He's going to save us? Did you know He's going to walk on water? Did you know these things? So we read in Luke chapter 2, verses 1 to 7. Again, passage you're very familiar with. And you hear it goes this way, Luke 2, 1 to 7. It says, "In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria." Verse 3, "And everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house of the line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him, and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger, because there was no guest room available for them." So we all have expectations about how people should arrive. When royalty is born, there's celebrations, there's parades, there's public announcements, and there's news headlines. When a political leader enters a city, the motorcade arrives. When I lived in Louisville all those years, and if you live in Louisville, unless you really like horse racing, you hate Derby Week because traffic is horrible. Because there's people coming in. It's just, start. And I remember one Saturday morning, I got off work in the morning, I was driving home, and on the Watterson Expressway, which is 264, the other side, I'm driving, I'm like, there is nobody on that side of the highway, which is unusual, right? It's a big city. And then all of a sudden, I see about 5 police cars coming, and then a stretch limo, and then 5 more. And so it's so important. This person was so important. And it was so important that this person gets to the Derby safe that they shut down an entire highway. And so that's what we think about, right? We think these political leaders, the inner city, there's motorcades, they shut down streets, they shut down highways. And as they arrive, crowds cheer, right? Roads are closed, and the cameras are rolling. We equate greatness sometimes with grandeur. But God turned those expectations upside down. When the King of Kings and Lord of Lords entered into this world, He came in the humblest way possible. Not in a palace, not wrapped in silk, not surrounded by servants, but laid in a manger. A feeding trough for animals. But the manger is more than just a backdrop to a Christmas card. It's a sermon in itself, and it tells us that God's ways are not our ways. It tells us about His humility, about His willingness to enter into our mess, His accessibility to all people, and even His mission that would one day lead Him from the wood of the manger to the wood of the cross. So today, let's go back to Bethlehem. Let's kneel beside the manger, and let's hear what it has to say to us. Because if we listen closely, it will tell us not only who Jesus is, but what that means for us today. So the first thing we see is the manger shows that God enters our mess. I don't know about you, but my life sometimes gets messy. And especially before I came to know Jesus, right? How messy was our life? Luke 2:7 is part of the scripture we read. It says, she placed him in a manger. She placed him in a manger. The manger wasn't sentimental, right? How many of you, especially grandparents, when you found out your first grandbaby was going to be born, you wanted to make sure that grandbaby had the nicest crib? One of those cribs that eventually grow, as the child grows, eventually becomes a little day bed and becomes, right? And you spare no expense for that bed, right? That's not what Jesus had. It wasn't sentimental. It wasn't soft. It wasn't sacred. It was a feeding trough, rough, unsanitary, and very common in the homes. Animals slobbered in it. It was never meant for a baby, much less the King of Kings. And yet, that's where God chose to begin his earthly ministry, in a manger. Jesus wasn't born in a palace, but he was born in a place that nobody wanted. He came into the mess of humanity, not the magnificence of human achievement. Why? Because the incarnation is not God waiting for us to tidy up our lives. I want to say that part again. The incarnation is not God waiting for us to clean up our mess. It's God stepping directly into the middle of our brokenness. John 1:14 says this, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us," or dwelt among us. And the phrase dwelt among us literally means he took up residence with us. See, it means God moved into our neighborhood, into our world, into our mess. He didn't send salvation from afar. He came himself. He didn't rescue us from a distance, but he entered the cave, the stable, the dirt of our reality. When first responders, firemen, right? First responders, when you ask little kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? The most common answer is a fireman, right? When first responders run into burning buildings, they don't wait for the flames to calm down. Hey, well, just a few minutes, I think they'll calm down over here. I think maybe the rain will, maybe. No, they don't do that. They don't wait for the fire to relax. They don't wait for that. No, they run into the flame. They enter the danger. Why? Because someone inside needs saving. That's what God did. God entered the burning house of humanity. Christmas isn't about getting your life together. If you think at Christmas you're going to suddenly get your life together, if you've not had your life together, you're fooling yourself. It's not about you getting your life together. It's about God coming into the parts of your life that are falling apart. Wherever your life feels messy, God is not intimidated by that. He meets you there. See, the manger preaches this truth loudly, that God is not afraid of your dirt. He steps into it with you. So we see that the manger shows God enters into our mess. And second, it shows the manger displays God's radical humility. Philippians 2:6-8 says this. Paul writes this about Jesus. It says, he made himself nothing. He humbled himself. He became obedient to death. The manger wasn't a mistake. It was a message. God wasn't forced into humility by circumstance. He chose humility deliberately. Think of what Jesus gave up. He gave up heavenly glory. He gave up angelic worship. The angels are worshiping around the throne. He gave that up. He gave up eternal splendor. He gave up infinite power. At one moment, he said light, and there was light. He traded all of that for flesh, for fragility, and a feeding trough. In the ancient world, humility was not admired. It was despised. Power, prestige, and domination defined greatness. Alexander the Great is so named because of his humility? No, because of his power and dominance. Yet Jesus flipped that script. He showed that the greatest among us is the one who serves, the one who stoops, the one who bends down low. There's a true story of a surgeon who went to visit a village clinic in the mountains. Instead of staying in the guest house that they had prepared for him, he slept in the dirt floor huts of the people that he served. And when they asked him why, he said, because you can't heal people you refuse to touch. That's the humility of Jesus. He didn't just come to save us, he came to sit with us. The manger confronts our pride. If the Son of Man embraced humility, then why do we cling to ego? Christmas challenges us to serve quietly, to choose the low place, and to put others first. You cannot follow the Jesus of the manger and live for applause. So the manger shows us that God enters into our mess. The manger shows us or displays God's radical humility. The manger also declares God's accessibility. In the ancient world, palaces were guarded. You read stories in the Bible about the kings and you find out they were guarded. Remember the story of Ehud? There were guards all over the place and he had to sneak through. He had to get through by saying, I brought gifts. Remember that story? They were guarded. They were surrounded. The temples, even the temples within the worship were restricted. We found that the shepherds couldn't even enter the temple because of their status. And we found that the kings in most cases are unreachable. But God chose to enter the world in a place that anyone could approach. In that manger, there were no guards. There were no velvet ropes, no authorized personnel only. I know most of you ignore those signs, or don't you? That's the kind of people we are. Oh, was that what that meant? Or I didn't see the sign? A stable, an open doorway, a feeding trough. Anyone could come, and we found out that the shepherds did. The lowest of society, those excluded from the temple, came close to God that night. Not the priests, not the nobles, not the elites, the shepherds. The manger removes every excuse. You don't need wealth, status, education, or a pedigree to approach Jesus. Think about this. The first sound that Jesus heard may have been the footsteps of people whom society ignored. Romans 10:13 says this. Paul writes this. He says, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord, regardless of wealth, status, personality, it doesn't matter. There's a tradition that the door to the church of the Nativity in Bethlehem is about 4 feet high. Now, for some of you, that's not a problem. If you're vertically challenged, not a problem. But for some of us, who we're close to the ceiling fan in some homes, right? So why would they build a door that's 4 feet tall? Because that's not even the average person's height, right? In the United States of America, 5'10", you're an average guy, so congratulations, all you average men. And 5'5", you're an average woman, so congratulations if you're average. Well, that's still a pretty good size amount above 4 feet. So why? Well, they say that it's 4 feet tall because everyone, regardless of status, must bow to enter. Whether symbolic or intentional, it's a great picture of the gospel. The door is open, but you must bow to enter. Christmas tells every broken, bruised, and burdened heart, you're invited, you're wanted, and you're welcome to come. The manger proves that Jesus is not far, but he's reachable. So we see that the manger shows God enters our mess. The manger displays God's radical humility. The manger declares God's accessibility. And the last one is the manger points us to the cross. The manger wasn't just the beginning, it was a preview. The humility of his birth foreshadowed the humility of his death. He was born in poverty and he died in shame. He was wrapped in swaddling cloths and later wrapped in burial cloths. He was laid in a borrowed manger and later a borrowed tomb. The incarnation, God with us, is inseparable from the crucifixion. Because Jesus didn't just come to live among us, he came to save us. Every step he took from Bethlehem on led to Calvary. Luke 19:10 reads this way, the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. Every step that he took in his life was leading him to the cross. The wood of the cradle points to the wood of the cross. He entered our world in weakness so he could redeem our world in power. He descended to the manger so he could descend still into death and rise in resurrection glory. In 2010, in Chile, country of Chile, miners were trapped underground. If you remember that story, the miners got trapped underground. And the rescuers, they found a way, but they had to send a capsule to go in to make sure that they could get to them. And guess what? One man had to volunteer to risk his life. Didn't even know if they could even do it. It was a rescue mission that they were like, we don't know if this is going to work. Can we get someone to volunteer? And one man volunteered and risked his life to go and to possibly rescue them. He was the first to descend into that danger. That's how Jesus is. He didn't just send us a message. He was the message. He didn't just send the good news. He was the good news. He was the one who came down to save us. Christmas is the beginning of that rescue mission for us. Don't leave Jesus in the manger. We love the story of Jesus in the manger. We love the songs we sing, away in a manger. By the way, Jesus probably cried when Martin Luther wrote that song. He said, no, Jesus didn't cry. But I'm pretty sure he's a baby, he cried. I've never met a baby that didn't cry. Anybody there? So when you sing that song, just kind of go, he cried a little bit, right? But a lot of people believe that Jesus never cried. I'm thinking, well, they've never been around a baby then, right? But don't leave Jesus in the manger. It's a wonderful story, but that's the story. That's the beginning. That's the rescue mission has begun when Jesus became a child. Remember, the Christmas story is precious. It's a wonderful story of love, God's love to us. His choosing of an unwed woman to bear the king. His choice to be in a manger. To angels to appear to the shepherds. The wise men to travel a couple of years to get there. All of these things, wonderful story. But remember, the Christmas story is precious, but the Easter story is powerful. He didn't come to be admired. He came to be the Savior. The manger is where grace appeared, and the cross is where grace accomplished its work. So as you picture today that stable in Bethlehem, and as you think about that during this Christmas season, think about what it reveals about God's heart. The God of glory willingly stepped down into our world, into our poverty, into our vulnerability, into our brokenness, into our mess, into our dirt. The one who spoke the universe into existence. The one who said light and there was light. The one who said that the fish and the birds and created everything. The one who spoke the universe into being made his first cry from the manger. The manger is not just a sentimental scene, it's a divine statement. It tells us that God's love will go anywhere, it will reach anyone, it will endure anything to bring salvation to us. It says to the broken, I'm not afraid of your mess. It says to the proud, this is the way, humility. And it says to the distant, you can come close now. But the manger also points forward. The rough wood that cradled the baby would one day be replaced by the rough wood of a cross. The same hands that Mary wrapped in swaddling cloths would one day be pierced for our sins. So the next time you see a nativity scene, and in a couple days they'll be going away, right? On December 26th, Valentine's candy comes out, right? And then you'll start bleeding into St. Patrick's Day. Everything will be green, and we'll forget about the nativity. So the next few days, when you see those nativity scenes, remember, it's not just the story of a birth. It's the beginning of redemption. This Christmas, don't just look at the manger, kneel beside it. Don't just admire the humility of Jesus, embrace it. And don't just celebrate his birth. Receive his gift of life. Would you stand this morning?